What's a rule at your job that exists purely because one idiot ruined it for everyone? Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for the support. Worked at a nonprofit for years, fighting for the greater good. We used to only have to clock in, didn't have to clock out. Damn you and your 3-hour lunches, Tiffany. Next story. I used to work at one of those huge destination liquor stores way back in the day. After the yearly inventory audit, they would take all the bottom shelf wine and mixers that weren't selling, put them in a cart at the front end, and let the employees take whatever they wanted. I never drank any of it, but I'd give stuff away to my more boozy friends. Then one day, Linda decided it wasn't fair because she wasn't in the first day it was all set out. Mind you, there was never anything good in there. We're talking about stuff that didn't even sell at cost. It was all ridiculous wine brands nobody had ever heard of, and premixes that tasted like 100% sugar. And it would sit there for days. But Linda made such a stink that management decided it would be better to huck everything into the trash compactor instead. Next story. Retail job went from just don't have holes in your jeans and make sure your shirt doesn't have swears printed on it to business casual, slacks and button-down shirt at minimum, because too many people showed up in pajamas. Next story. Had 2 of them won. No birthday cakes. We used to have 3 people make cakes for all 200 employees. Someone went to HR because theirs was store-bought. 2. Someone decided not to go on site for 6 months. It's now no longer self-managed, but required 3 times a week, different company from above. Next story. For years, my corporate card was paid by the company after I submitted my expense report with my receipts. Then we had a major change. The employees would submit expense report and then get cut a check, and they had to pay the bill. This was annoying and slightly scary given I didn't know if I was late due to reimbursement time if it would affect my credit score. I set a meeting with our finance head to ask what's up. Turns out a scheme in our Chicago office ruined it for all of us. At Super Bowl time, several employees went to stores and bought giant TVs for their respective parties. Afterward, they reboxed the TVs and returned them for a refund to the corporate card. They figured they'd just cancel out the transaction and delete it, and nobody would be the wiser. Not so. Next story. My favorite ever. An actual company rule on paper. No drinking before lunch and only 2 drinks while on the clock. It was a property management company. The entire job was a complete fever dream, but the office had a stocked beer fridge, and one guy would literally drink 6 to 10 beers a day, starting right when he got there. Next story. I was self-employed for 35 years. Finally, a Fortune 500 recruited me to come on board. Hey, what wasn't there to like? Easygoing boss who respects my abilities, steady pay, and fantastic benefits. I'd only make the 20-minute drive into the office for the occasional meeting. It was great. Because I spent a huge chunk of my life as self-employed, nobody ever had to supervise me. I knew what I was supposed to do and just got it done. I typically was at my desk at 8 a.m. and worked until I'd gotten everything done. And in truth, it was a snap. I was typically done by 2 p.m., chiefly because I'm efficient. Rave reviews, raises, you name it. But there were people who abused the hell out of the WFH policy, as in they'd do nothing all day and collect a paycheck. The C-suite began demanding that employees show up in the office 3 days a week. Maybe not stay all 8 hours, but swipe in. So here it is, a perfectly fine Thursday morning. I am caught up on my assignments through September. There is literally nothing I need to do at the moment, pending approvals and my supervisor getting back to me on a couple of assignments. But I am about to hop in the shower, drive downtown, sit in my cubicle, and wait until lunch so I can drive home again. Next story. Told my 2 reports if I was out of the office. I didn't mind if they went home a little early, meaning like an hour or so. Had to go to a conference an hour away for a few days, and they both stayed home the whole time. We had a really good thing going, and now there's eyes on us. Next story. No headphones or earbuds in the building, at all. One person kept wearing them in a not safe area, even after multiple warnings. So the company said no one is allowed to use them, even sitting at our desks, in the office. Next story. Management would get a person a birthday card, $20 gift card, and cupcakes for the department, all paid for by the company. Of course, everyone in the department would sign the card, and that is an important part. You see, the employees were never asked to chip in for the party stuff. It was a company morale booster paid for completely by them, with no desire to be paid for by employees. But one person felt that since they circulated the card, that the management could have asked for a donation, and that he felt he shouldn't have to donate to the celebration, so he complained to upper management. New rule: birthday celebrations are banned. Next story. About 20 years ago, my entire 13-story building was evacuated 3 times over a 5 or 6 week period because of burnt microwave popcorn setting off the fire alarm. Microwave popcorn was permanently banned after that, so technically, it might have been the result of 3 idiots, not 1. Next story. I worked at a daycare where someone was drinking on the job, so they told us we had to have clear water bottles. Because that solves the problem. If you think the opacity of the container is the only thing keeping your employees from drinking on the job, maybe hire better people. Next story. I was kind of the idiot. I could have avoided it, but it also wasn't my fault that it happened. I went into the data center one morning to swap out a PCIe card in one of my servers. The old one had stopped working, and I needed to get it in ASAP to bring the server back online. So I went down the same morning the new card was delivered to install it. It should have been a straightforward swap. For those who might not know, some servers, like mine, sit on rails. Kind of like your kitchen drawer. You can slide them out of the rack to access the internal components for maintenance. Well, when I slid the server out, it fell off one of the side rails, and I caught it. So there I was, at maybe 7 a.m., holding up an approximately 80-pound, bulky 2U server. There was nobody else in the data center, and no calling for help, because nobody outside the data center would be able to hear me. I looked up and tried to signal the security camera for help, but I guess nobody was watching, because nobody ever came to help or brought it up later. Adrenaline was coursing through me as I struggled to hold that thing up. It felt like I was about to have a heart attack. I couldn't set the server down because there was nowhere to put it. Letting it fall was a last resort, and one I desperately wanted to avoid. It was very possible it would take out a few servers worth $250,000 on its way down, and there was a non-zero chance it could hit the entire building's fiber and phone network, which was in the rack behind me. I was relatively new at the company, having worked there for only about a year and a half at that point, and I didn't want that on my record. It seemed like forever before I was able to steady myself and come up with a course of action. I slowly changed how I was holding the server to free my left hand and arm, then very carefully fixed the dangling rail so I could slide the server back into the rack. It took great effort, but I managed to get it done. I said, "Damn it," and left the data center until a coworker showed up to help finish the replacement. It became a standing rule after that. Nobody does hardware maintenance in the data center without a buddy. Oh, and the reason the server fell off the rail? Some idiot, not me, forgot to screw it into the server case. It had just been dangling there on hope and dreams the whole time. Next story. Nobody besides bartenders behind the bar. Sounds okay in theory until you're slammed and you want a server to help out with sodas or something. Well, a younger server came behind the bar and was drinking from a soda nozzle none of us knew existed. He got very sick. Next story. Worst one was from a job like 20 years ago. No taking your work truck home when on call. Had a fun telecom job supporting a utility control network, large SCADA system. Today we'd call it an operational technology network, but the company didn't use that term back then. We had telecom gear spanning multi-hour drives in any direction from our city, and on call meant if something was down, we'd likely have to drive a couple hours into the mountains to go troubleshoot gear and repunch down wired circuits. This one idiot stopped at the grocery store on his way home, didn't put his truck into park, and while he was talking into the store, his truck rolled into a Porsche. Don't remember what kind of Porsche. After that, we weren't allowed to take trucks home anymore, which meant when we got paged, we had to spend 30 to 45 minutes going to the office to grab a truck before making a long drive out to whatever site was having issues. Next story. We had an account at the grocery store across the street for buying coffee and snacks for the break room. Then the new guy decided to put all his groceries for the month on the account. That ended that real quick. Next story. In the late 80s, early 90s, 2 of my cousins worked at the same grocery store. One of them dared the other to like the inside of the freezer section. His tongue got stuck. 10 years later, when my brother and sister were getting jobs, siblings were not allowed to work at the same store. Next story. Constantly. The saying in our company is every time someone crapped their pants, everyone gets to wear a diaper. Somebody brings their kid in and he falls off a chair. All chairs need to be labeled staff only. Somebody burns themselves on the coffee pot. Coffee everywhere. Gone immediately. Next story. Beer taps weren't turned on until 4 p.m. Used to be all day. But apparently too many people couldn't understand that you're not supposed to drink all day at work. Yes, this was in tech. And yes, it's probably stupid to have any alcohol at an office. Next story. All open-toed shoes were banned in the office when one idiot wore 99-cent flip-flops in the office. This caused the management team to look closely at the footwear policy. During those discussions, defining a flip-flop ended up being difficult, and they ended up banning any open-toed shoe without a heel cover. Crocs were named as a banned shoe too. Next story. About 15 years ago, I worked on an old growth survey project for the Forest Service. They made it very clear that if we ate in the vehicle while we were driving and were caught, we would be fired. This is because a former employee had been driving a windy road next to a river, choked on his chips, and plummeted into the river. Next story. No massage gun use on coworkers. Now that probably sounds like an okay rule at first. Massages on coworkers is sketchy territory. Here's the problem. Hand massages are fine. If you use a massage gun which separates the giver and receiver, that's the problem. We had someone who had a literal sign-up list for massages during downtime. 50 people would sign up daily. There was a wait list. Massages only given when all work was done. They were professional and taking care of fellow healthcare workers' backs. One person who didn't even get a massage got offended that there was someone using one. No incident, no problem. Literally just didn't like it. Now only hand massages are allowed. Next story. No bladed box cutters, only the little ceramic nub ones. Some girl reached blindly into a labeled box that had a closed box of razors in it and wigged out and filed a report. All our workhorse ergonomic box cutters were banned. We worked in a warehouse where we opened hundreds of boxes a day. Next story. Not a rule, but at my last company, we changed payroll vendors. And part of that change was a transition from twice monthly pay to bi-weekly pay. So, instead of getting paid on the 1st and 15th of every month, we would get paid every other Friday. Now the company was doing well, so when this transition was made, in order to smooth out the transition and make it so people didn't have to go an extra amount of time between paychecks, the company announced that they were going to essentially give us an extra paycheck during the month that we were making the transition. This extra paycheck would allow people to budget the changes necessary for paying mortgages and other automated bills, etc. But the long and short of it was, every single employee of the company would essentially be receiving almost 2 full weeks' pay, free. But no, a very small handful of people complained loudly enough and often enough that the new payroll would ruin their ability to budget their money effectively, as they had all of their bills timed to be due just after the 1st or just after the 15th, and that the change would be catastrophic. Finally, after enough whining and complaining, the COO just said damn it and canceled the payroll transition. We still went to the new payroll vendor, but our pay remained twice monthly. And no, we didn't get that fat, free paycheck. Those jerks cost me thousands. Assholes. Next story. As a security measure, everyone was supposed to lock their laptop before leaving their desk. Say, to go to the bathroom. As a fun way to make it stick, if anyone found an unlocked laptop, they'd quickly change the background to a picture of David Hasselhoff or send an email from that laptop to the whole team, promising to bring donuts for everyone the next day. We called it getting hoffed. It was awesome, until one guy without a sense of humor got hoffed, and instead of learning a lesson, went complaining to their boss's boss's boss that it's unfair to have to buy donuts just because they forgot to lock their laptop. Yep, end of an era. Next story. Extremely strict IT. No employee can install or even update any programs on our computers, and we have to get permission to get them to install anything, which they often decline. All because old man Ronnie installed malware that destroyed the server. Stupid Ronnie. Next story. The school district I drive for now has these route number signs on the buses, while the buses already have their own numbers. So now whenever you take a spare bus, you have to fiddle with this little board to make it say the right number. It started when a parent complained about a driver showing up in a spare bus. They couldn't tell what bus it was. My old district would just print out your original number, you'd tape it in a window if you took out a spare bus, and everybody got the idea. Next story. No using glass pipette on a chemical lab because some stupid idiot on another site on another country have a glass pipette broke and it scratches their finger. Next story. Did a lotto pool at an old workplace. While it never became against the rules per se, the district manager did politely ask us to stop. One employee thought that by contributing $1, she got 1/13 total participating employees if we won. At that time, everyone was putting in $5 to $10. She didn't handle that she got a maximum, or 161st if we won, so she called it in as harassment every week, which the DM had to investigate every time. After a couple of months, he, very politely honestly, asked if we could stop, because he was having to dedicate a half day to a nothing burger complaint each week. Her next complaint was, "I know they're still doing it, but just not telling me." We had legitimately stopped. Next story. No more working from home because a coworker decided to not even bother to log in and pretend to work, and apparently somehow thought no one would notice. I actually worked at home and loved it. We all got punished for her being lazy. Next story. Used to get damaged housing materials at work for no cost. Initially, you can take as much as you want, provided it wasn't you that personally damaged it. Then one asshat damaged a whole lot of it and asked if he could take it, to which they said, not a chance. He was hoping they would eventually make an exception since we don't sell it as much, but his plan was foiled. He got fired soon after that for an unrelated reason, but I digress. After the incident, management started to put limits on how much we can take on a given year. Everyone agreed it made sense and was a fair policy. Then another asshat figured maybe I should ask other people for their share for the year if they aren't using it. It would eventually be known by everyone that he was using all of the things he was getting for his side hustle as a contractor during weekends. This went on for a year, and then management found out it and have now canceled that benefit completely. Everyone got so upset at the guy that everyone started reporting him to management at the slightest safety infraction. He was also fired soon after that incident. Next story. Individual webcams must always be on during meetings at all times, whether you are in office, in a conference room full of other people in the meeting, or working from home. I understand wanting work from home people to have on webcams, but I have a few issues with it. If you have a meeting with 100 plus people and everyone has on their webcam, it can get laggy. It can be overstimulating and distracting too when people are sitting there with kids and pets on their lap, and I'm just sitting there like, this is a regular occurrence. Can a manager say something? Also can be distracting when everyone in a conference room has their individual cameras on and are huddled together, just lots of movement going on. If the meeting isn't super pertinent to me and I have to go to the bathroom, everyone has to watch me walk away to the bathroom in my own house. Now, why do we have this rule? Because people were taking their kids to the pool or going to get their nails done. The worst offender, though, was a girl who started her own business going live on TikTok and walking around Marshall's auctioning off popular products and live shopping while she was at work and on meetings on her other phone. Next story. One place I worked at used to do BBQs every quarter as long as we hit certain metrics. That was until one day my boss saw 3 different members of the same family taking all the steaks being cooked for one shift and saran wrapping them between 2 plates to take home for later. After that, we only got 75-25 ground beef burgers, and we were only allowed 2 each, and they had one of us managers policing the break room the whole time. Next story. Someone complained that the company hadn't raised amount of the food voucher they started giving to employees during COVID. They stopped them altogether. Next story. I work in medical billing, and when we work a patient's claim, we will check for any open claims they may have and work them. We figured, oh well, we already on this patient, might as well do it. Turns out some people are very overprotective of their accounts. So now you can only work the accounts assigned to you. If you see anything else open for that patient, you just leave it. Next story. In one of my previous jobs, it was common for us to forward our phone lines to reception during lunch. One employee decided to just forward all his calls to reception, all day, every day. Our receptionist was swamped and rightfully annoyed. Moving forward, our team wasn't allowed to forward calls to reception anymore. We had to institute a rotating lunch schedule so that only one person could be on lunch at a time, and that person had to forward their calls to another team member. I remember the employee in question tried to pull the same stunt, forwarded his calls even after he had returned to his desk. The coworker he had forwarded his calls to marched over to his desk, hit the call forwarding button on his phone, and turned it off. Strangely, he only ever did this to his female colleagues. He eventually resigned, to everyone's great relief. Next story. We had 2 microwaves on our floor, whereas the cafetorium in the building with the bank of microwaves was a hassle to get to and use, and people would waste 15 minutes of a 45-minute lunch break heating their food up or going down there. But some silly donkey put microwave popcorn in there for way too long and smoked out the floor. Besides, there was another twit who would microwave fish, even though that's the number 2 rule of microwaves after not putting cutlery in there. Anyways, those idiots ruined it for the floor about 100 people. Never forget. Next story. I worked at a giant data center. It would take up to 15 minutes to walk from one end to the other of a single building. We had Razor scooters, unpowered, to make transiting faster, until one idiot got caught doing stupid things on one. Next story. 2 from our school board. 1. High school teachers used to be able to leave early on exam days and complete their exam marking at home. One teacher used that time to do some home renovations and injured themselves. They decided to file a workers' compensation report since it happened during school hours. That was the last time we were able to leave early to mark at home. 2. Not every course had a final exam, and students in those courses were told to stay home on exam day. A student at one of the schools got in trouble with the police and was arrested. Mom was outraged that they were not in school at the time and used a lawyer to make a complaint about the fact that their child was supposed to stay home. The following school year, the policy changed, and teachers in courses with no exams still had to provide some sort of evaluated activity during the exam. Teachers now had to do pointless busy work, and students were forced to come into school on a day that could be used to study for other courses or just to sleep in. Next story. At an old job, they would escort you out of the building the day that you submitted your resignation letter. However, they'd keep paying you until your resignation was official, so your 2 weeks' notice was pretty much a 2-week paid vacation. Long story short, someone lost their absolute crap while being escorted out, and that was the end of that. So your options were stay and work for 2 weeks with very limited system access and get paid, or leave that day and not get paid. Next story. Work at a movie theater, and we have a few. 1. Customers can no longer request posters when we're done with them. We used to have a sign-up sheet, with the understanding that staff get first pick, so there was no guarantee they'd get the poster they wanted. We'd take their number and call them if we had extras. But one guy ruined it by signing up for like a dozen different posters for movies where there clearly wouldn't be extras, and then showing up and causing a scene that was so bad, we banned him and almost called the cops. Like he was screaming, swearing, hitting the walls, etc., because he could get free crap. 2. We are no longer allowed to speak to customers outside before we open, nor can open the doors for mailmen, deliveries without manager approval. Like we're not even allowed to open the door and say, "Hey, we open in minutes," because we've had more than one instance of customers literally grabbing the door, forcing their way in, and refusing to leave if we crack the door open to answer a question. And they always think they're in the right despite literally committing a crime. Like they literally committed B&E. It's unbelievable. 3. We don't allow bikes anywhere near the front of our building, and definitely not inside, because we had a group of 14-year-old pricks literally ram through the doors and ride around the inside for about a minute, screaming and causing a scene. Cops were called, they were banned. Honestly, I can think of a few more if I really thought about it. Next story. At my old job, we had a rule that nobody was allowed to take leftover food home after staff events. It sounded ridiculous until I found out why. One guy apparently used to take the entire tray of food home, not a plate, the whole tray. Then he started showing up early to events just to pack food into containers before everyone else had eaten. Management eventually made a blanket rule that leftovers had to be thrown away. So instead of telling one guy, "Dude, leave some food for everyone," they made 40 people watch perfectly good food go into the trash. Next story. Cashiers can't push baskets from their own register to the entrance, because one person would use that as a chance to kill 1 to 2 minutes and abandon their post. Next story. Not really a rule, but it came down to having a note posted in the kitchen stating that everyone is responsible for restocking things like utensils, plates, waters, coffee pods, etc. The youngest employee is like 27. Why are we having to remind adults to replace things they use daily? Next story. During COVID, we had office breakfasts. Every week, one section would cook breakfast on a Friday for the entire workplace. It was so much fun, and we really enjoyed the time getting to know colleagues we wouldn't normally meet, until one woman decided it should be a competition between the sections. So each Friday became more and more elaborate. People began planning their section's breakfasts weeks in advance. Spies were deployed across offices. There were sabotage attempts, and HR had to step in. I was HR at the time. Because of one person, what started as one guy's really sweet and thoughtful way to bring us all together over the pandemic turned into arguments, tears, and a total disaster. Next story. Blue Jeans Friday went away. When it was announced, It was clearly stated that tops had to cover the jeans at all times, even when the wearer lifted their arms. No visible midriffs, muffin tops. The announcement said specifically that it was a trial to see if people could adhere to that rule. It lasted for one Friday. Not just one idiot. Apparently about half the building couldn't read. We got the email canceling the trial on Monday morning. Next story. Several years ago, management demanded that everyone sign a memo stating that they would not operate any personal vehicles except the ones they owned. When asked what prompted this very vague, weird, specific request, our manager explained that an employee on a completely separate team that didn't even work in the same state as us had let another employee try out his new sports car, and that idiot managed to swipe a building. Next story. I'm a backup for a daily environmental inspection. I mainly do weekends because the primary guy does Monday to Friday every week. We used to go do the 2 to 3 hour inspection, scan forms, and send them to our boss for review, then leave. If there were any issues, you could just text the foreman for the day about it. Well, the previous primary falsified the inspection for the better part of a year, so after he got fired, we now have to do a bunch of extra BS to prove we were on site, including tracking down the foreman for a signature, which has taken me upwards of an hour extra at times. Next story. My company offers lunch, including a salad bar, sandwiches, pizza, a weekly special, sushi on Thursdays, food trucks, etc., for free. Retirees were formerly allowed to swing by and get a free lunch. Well, one guy took it to an extreme and would take more than any one person needed on a weekly basis. CEO had enough and ended the benefit for all retirees. Next story. I can make it worse. How about everyone being idiots? We used to have a flexi-time system at work. Then one day, everyone took it apart from me, and when the manager called to speak to someone, I had to inform him no one but finance and I were there. After the call, finance walked in and put up a note. No more flexi. Next story. We used to just have to move a card over to show that we were there, but people started coming late and having other people move their cards for them, so now we have to actually sign a sheet of paper. Next story. My job used to give a stipend if using your cell phone was part of your job duties. The stipend was a flat $75 a month. My cell phone plan was $45 a month, so it was a nice extra $30. Then they had to investigate some employees in another part of the company. Text messages were subpoenaed. They had to sort through personal and work messages. Now everyone has a company phone. It's an iPhone 15 even though all our work apps are Google. I hate iPhones, and I hate having to carry two phones. Next story. I work at a restaurant, and we have a rule of don't hang tongs on the bar in front of the clamshell grill. We have a Taylor Crown Series clamshell grill with touchscreens on the front of them, and a bar across the front as well just above them. A few people hung tongs on the bar and smacked them off the screen, and essentially wrecking the screen and costing the company $800 per screen. District manager instituted a new rule that anybody caught hanging tongs off the grill's bar is grounds for immediate termination because it was such an issue of people continuously doing it. Next story. No roller skates on plant. Ammunition factory and some legendary gentleman that worked night shift brought in his roller skates one evening to be more efficient. Next story. I worked at a place that had a rule that you couldn't bring bows, arrows, or crossbows on the premises. Apparently, some of the shop guys had set up targets in the woods behind the building and were firing out one of the rear emergency doors on their brakes. Next story. I once worked somewhere with a dress code that limited the number of sequins on any piece of clothing to 26. I would have loved to have been around and witnessed why this policy was written, because you know HR wrote a whole dumbass policy for one person leaving sequins everywhere. Next story. Football strip cards were banned. For years, we had a guy run a card for the entire season, $20 a line, winner takes all. The rule was, if you didn't pay up by end of day Friday, your spot was up for grabs. A forfeited slot won, and the guy that usually played, but didn't pay up, went to HR. Next story. I run monthly hiring events for my work. We now require RSVPs for all attendees, which has decreased turnout by approximately 50%. Why? Because one man has some sort of weird obsession with us and keeps coming in under different names and using disguises. He has changed his haircut and color, glasses, worn hats, worn masks, etc. He has made employees feel extremely uncomfortable and is not stable, and made my job so much harder. Next story. At my old job, the company used to cater lunch for people's birthdays. The person whose birthday it was would pick a restaurant, and the company would pay for everyone's lunch. We were a small office of only about 12 people, but the person in charge of ordering would deliberately order almost double the amount of meals we actually needed so she could take the extras home. Eventually, she wasn't even trying to pass them off as leftovers. When the food arrived, she would immediately take the extra meals, hide them in her office, and then distribute everyone else's orders. Management eventually caught on to what she was doing. Needless to say, that was the end of the company-paid birthday lunches. Next story. No summer barbecues at work anymore because someone referred to it as Meaty Man Day, dinged as both sexist and anti-vegan. The person that called it Meaty Man Day was a woman, and vegetarian, but not vegan. Next story. One company decided to put a mini golf in the floor so people can relax and talk and have a meeting while doing something fun. The idea was great, until somebody, because there is always somebody, decided to flex his range skills and launch the ball 20 feet over the heads of the people working. The next day, the mini golf was an artificial grass space with pillows. Next story. No birthday cakes or celebrations. Worked in a very large call center, about 1,000 employees. Team managers had a discretionary budget to buy little awards or do something nice for the team. A subset of managers would buy their team members a cake to share amongst the team for their birthday. Other team managers used their budget for other things. This resulted in complaints to HR. Why does Sally get a cake for her birthday and I don't? But y'all got pizza instead didn't cut it. So, no birthday cakes or other celebrations allowed. As in, you couldn't even bring in cookies you made and give them to someone, at least according to the rules. Every month on the 15th, the company provided cookies to all employees to celebrate birthdays. The 15th because it evenly split the month to remove any bias. You got one cookie. There was a flavor selection until one time they ran out of a flavor and people complained. After that, it was a sugar cookie. If you weren't scheduled on the 15th, your manager took your cookie and locked it in their desk for delivery on your next working day. Next story. We used to have unfiltered internet until a dumbass former employee installed OnlyFans on his work tablet and saved his login. I cannot believe he was not fired. Next story. When the cleanup crew at my job changes out toilet paper, they have to put new TP in even if the old TP still has a lot left. And there were a handful of people who would take those almost full rolls home with them. Didn't harm anything. Sure, you could argue it's gross that other people had their hands on it, but it's not going in my bathroom, so why did it matter? It's going in the trash at the end of the day. We work in a factory, so it's not like it's been contaminated by strangers and who knows what. It's all co-workers. One woman complained that it looked trashy and that it makes it seem as though they don't get paid well enough to afford toilet paper. And the next week, they notified everyone that all used toilet paper rolls must be discarded on site. Next story. I was the idiot. I worked in a school, and every employee had an alarm code. The system was designed so that every employee had their own personal code so we could look up who was turning off, turning on the alarms. Whoever was last in the building had to lock up and turn on the alarms when they left. Well, I wasn't given a code because you work 0.8 instead of full time, so I couldn't be the first one at work. And I certainly couldn't be the last one to leave. This was annoying because every other employee in my position was also 0.8 time, and they all had codes because their work required them to have access. I was singled out for some reason. There were many days where I had to stay late because of projects, paperwork I was working on, and I couldn't take them home due to the confidentiality of the work. Whenever I stayed late, I had to ask someone else to stay late, which is a pain in the ass for them because, duh. My mother worked as a teacher at the same school. She gave me her code so I could do my work and have access to the building without putting anyone else out. One night, a coworker and I were drinking at the bar down the road, and we decided to work more on the set for the upcoming musical. We were tipsy, but we were determined that it would make things awesome artistically. It did, for the record. I used my mother's code to get us in, even though my coworker had his own. Well, such late-night alarm code access set an alert to our head of security, who looked at the cameras and saw that my mother's code was used and she was nowhere to be found. My mother was an inch from being fired for security reasons, and every teacher in the building had to pick a different code. Not only that, but all the 0.8 employees lost their ability to have a code at all. Turns out when your employees who need access to the building after hours the most no longer have that access, a lot of the background things at a school grind to a halt. But the school never backed down from that decision. I messed up. Next story. Our CEO was fine with people coming to the office once a week. The official rule was twice, but many people only came once, and everyone was fine with it, especially since our offices are in a new location since COVID and are in an annoying place to reach by car or public transports. There wasn't really any checking on whether or not you came in or not, and most people did come in once or twice a week. Turns out, 2 people from customer services came in maybe once a month for a day, and those were also the only days they actually worked. When they were working from home, they were actually just not doing anything and just regularly connect to Teams from their phones to show, "Look, I was online." It came to light when they were dumb enough to post pictures of them having drinks outside in the middle of the day on Feces Book. They were fired, and the CEO was so angry. The new rule is now that everyone must come at least 3 days a week at the office. Next story, no shorts to be worn. Do one idiot wearing short shorts and showing everyone his balls was a traumatic experience having lived through it. He has left, the rule remains. Next story. When I was in the military, every platoon, company, etc. had their own little unit mottos, logos, etc. that you'd see painted really big on the walls of their buildings. Think like Air Force bomber wings with names like the Flying Tigers, or some crap that might have a big tiger's head painted on the side of their hangar. Then one platoon of scout, snipers, took a picture in front of a flag with the SS logo because they apparently thought the SS stood for Scout Snipers and were fully unaware of the World War II connection. And the media got a hold of the picture and people freaked out. Every single unit had to paint over our logos on the walls, even though most of them were just harmless bullshit. I have no idea if they're back to being allowed to paint their logos on the sides of their buildings again, but for a while, it was banned. Next story. Got asked to come in 2 to 3 times per week. One guy showed up 3 days the first week, then proceeded to not show up for 3 weeks straight. Now we're all in office 4 times per week. Next story. I would buy breakfast for my morning team members on payday. Mary reported it as favoritism because I didn't buy the nighttime people dinner. I never worked with any of them. Next story. Years ago, I worked at a Philly cheesesteak place that let us take home a shift sandwich nice we clocked out. Could be whatever we wanted. Super high quality ingredients, and was incredibly generous of the owner. I usually ended up trading mine with some other guys who worked in the food industry and could flip one of those things into ramen, a pizza, some bomb Thai food. It saved me so much money in groceries. Then a new cashier came on board. On her second shift, she brought her own plus-size tortillas into work and made the biggest burrito I've ever seen. We're talking probably a 4 to 5 pounds monstrosity with A-grade prime rib, all the toppings, and a metric crapload of cheese. Worst part? She did this right in front of the owner, who she'd never met before. He only came in once or twice a week. There's a chance he would have let it slide, but then she pulled out another tortilla, and the owner shut that crap down. Next shift, there was a huge sign in the break room saying that there would be no more take-home food or shift meals due to employees taking advantage of the restaurant. That girl quit a week later, but the owner refused to budge on his decision, citing health, safety concerns. Damn you, Rosie, ruined a good thing for everyone. Next story. I had to lock the supply room door at my last office because one guy would lose 4+ pens a day and kept taking more. At first, I tried just stopping him specifically and telling him he wasn't allowed more pens, but he started having other people get him pens. It might not sound like a big deal, but we bought really nice weighted metal pens because we did a lot of paperwork still. The things cost $4 a piece, so $16 a day, $80 a week, $320 a month. And this was at a relatively small company. My monthly supply budget was only $600, and this guy was pissing away half of it. Before he showed up, a box of 20 pens lasted us 2 to 3 months. I'm honestly not convinced he wasn't doing it on purpose, or selling them or something. I don't understand how you lose 4 pens a day that often. Next story. I work on a college campus. In the summer, the dress code is relaxed because of the heat. Some employees whose role requires them to spend lengths of time outdoors are allowed to wear shorts. About 5 years ago, this was amended to specifically exclude cargo shorts. I don't work outside or wear cargo shorts, but I got a real kick out of this one. I would love to know who ruined it for the other folks. The running joke was that the wife of some dude that wears cargo shorts rewrote the dress code. Next story. We used to get vacation days assigned the first of the year, and they were also available as soon as you were hired. One guy came in, and 3 days after declared, My family takes a 1-week trip to a cabin every year, so I need the week off next week. There was nothing preventing him from doing this, so HR changed it so you accrue vacation days every pay period. So if you get 4 weeks vacation, you got like 25.92 hours per 2-week pay period. In effect, nobody got access to their full vacation benefits for an entire year. Then they started wondering why nobody was taking time off until the last quarter of the year when it was our project season. Maybe it's because that's when everyone actually has any vacation days. We've since switched to an unlimited PTO policy, but somehow that's worse. If you don't have a finite amount of time to use, people tend to take vacations less and feel guilty about asking for time off. Next story. I was working at a sixth form college a couple of years ago when I was blocked from attending a trip due to the medication I am on, definitely discrimination and Against Equality Act. The thing was, there was another member of staff on similar medication, but they were going on the trip. After asking that member of staff if it was okay, I made a complaint asking why I was told it was too dangerous to attend when my colleague was fine. The next thing I know, I am told that thanks to my complaint, they now require every single member of staff to disclose all health issues and medication that they had been prescribed. I still wasn't allowed on the trip, and they made it clear to everyone that the new policy was because of me. If I had never disclosed the medication I was on, none of this would have happened. But the nature of my meds meant I needed to disclose to protect myself if the students ever found out. That place was so dodgy. Next story. Not my current job, but my last one. A few people so badly took advantage of work travel that we were forced to use a very rigid booking platform, which, for the most part, did not save money. I had a situation one time where the best I could do on the platform was $1,200 for a 2-night trip. I went to the finance group and pointed out that I could literally get the same trip for $500 if I just used JetBlue Vacations instead, with all the printed proof that it was the same flights and hotel. They said no. The absurd thing was that the booking platform was super vulnerable to manipulation, because on flights, it had departure and arrival sliders that could be adjusted down to maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And it only demanded secondary approval if you didn't pick the cheapest flight within your specific search parameters. So, if you really wanted a specific flight, even if it was more expensive, you could just adjust the departure criteria to match that flight, and it would let you book it without any additional approval, even if it was 3 times the price of the least expensive flight on that route for that day. Next story. When I was younger, I worked at a beach resort. Every 6 months or so, we purged the lost and found box. You wouldn't believe the crap that people would leave behind. Cameras, entire suitcases of clothes, wallets, case of beer, or an unopened bottle of liquor, etc. We would send a letter advising them, but for some reason some people never claimed their lost property. Whoever found the item would tape their name onto it, and management would give it to them when the box was too full. One day, a couple of housekeepers got in a hair-pulling punching contest over a pair of sunglasses. From that day forward, nobody was allowed anything from the lost and found box. They just called a local church, and they would pick up the stuff for charity. Next story. I work in a manufacturing facility. The operators have the default option to step through an instruction on their screen if they need to. Let's say something didn't register, but it did get done. One person was bypassing the most critical step of assembly because he didn't feel like troubleshooting it or dealing with it. So we took away everyone's ability except low-level supervisors. This person then memorized the credentials of the low-level supervisor and kept doing it. The end result was me making a barcode badge for the low-level supervisor of 35 random characters and restricting the system to only accept that. Next story. My boss is cracking down on following the official policy for taking time off because one person keeps bailing on shifts for no reason. My boss is great and has never really cared about accommodating reasonable requests, but one person keeps bailing at the last minute, so now she has to police it for everyone. She's not happy about it either, but it opens the door for problems for her if she enforces it for one person and not others. Next story. I worked for a company that made agricultural equipment. One day, some engineer was out in the field with a customer who had a problem with his machine that involved the fuel filter. The filter was replaced, but the engineer wanted to examine the old filter to see if he could figure out the root cause of the issue. so he tossed it in his luggage and headed to the airport. Apparently, the gasoline left in the filter triggered those explosive detectors at the airport, and there was a whole big incident. In order to avoid a fine from the government, all employees had to take a training class about not taking used fuel filters on airplanes. I'm an IT guy. They wouldn't let me within 100 yards of a fuel filter. Still had to take the training. Next story. I work in a large store, and like most, we have a giant safe, money dispenser for the cash in the store. I used to be able to get into it to work on it when bills would get jammed. In extreme situations, we might have to call tech support, but 90% of the time, I could unjam it and we could go about our day. Then someone at another store in another city gave away about $50K to a phone scammer. Now none of us are permitted to open the machine to work on it during business hours without another manager's verification and calling tech support for them to open the doors to the machine remotely. One idiot and an entire corporate chain has to change all their security policies and make everything harder to navigate. Next story. We used to be able to have an adult beverage or two on the company dime when we were traveling for business purposes. That changed when one underage, over 18, under 21, employee was served a drink by a restaurant while a large group of employees was eating dinner after finishing up a project for the day. It wasn't the company's fault, it was the restaurant's fault for not IDing everyone, but leadership decided it was too big of a liability and took that away from all of us. Now if we want adult beverages, we have to have them on a separate receipt and pay for them personally. Next story. Not allowed to fix my own customers' cars after work. Dude that messed it up always did extra jobs for himself after work, but if my boss asked if he could stay 5 minutes extra since it was super busy, he always had excuses to pick up his daughter, etc. Next story. Not me, but my version of this story isn't as funny. Girlfriend's stepdad used to work for some sort of road company that dealt with big trucking equipment. At one point, some idiot decided to tie a rope to the back of one, get on skis, and have his buddy drag him around in the truck like a dog sled. There is now a no skiing warning symbol on the back of these vehicles. Next story. We could no longer directly send contracts to clients for a bit because someone was promising fee rates that were well under what we offered to make the sale, sending their boss a higher rate agreement for the approval process, then using a loophole to put the promised lower rate into the system, essentially breaking the rules to get their commission. Next story. Plot twist. I am the idiot who ruined it for everyone. I work at a credit union, and we participate in a program called co-op branches, meaning anyone from a participating credit union can come in, give their info, and do basic transactions. Long story short, I deposited a check for a co-op brancher who was previously charged off with us. The check ended up bouncing because I somehow missed that the handwritten legal line only said, "and 0 cents," until the guy had already left, and we didn't have a current phone number on file for him, and the credit union lost money. Days later, we get a company-wide email that we can no longer do transactions for co-op branchers who have charge-offs with us. Whoops. Next story. Direct from the employee handbook. Do not tell, employee mentioned by name, how to do his job. Employees who try to tell, named employee, how to do his job will be held responsible for any fallout caused. Next story. I work ground crew for a major airline. We used to be able to clock in and out from an app on our phone. The app won't let you clock in unless you're within range, but too many people were using a VPN to change their location so they could clock in from home. Now, we can only clock in, out on our scanners, or one of the manual punch clocks. Next story. Do not put disposable towels or wipes in the washing machines, with the context that we have them in the first place because the temps kept using actual towels and washcloths to clean crap and throwing them away. Then the same temps are the ones throwing the disposables in the wash. Also, housekeeping and supervisors are the only personnel allowed to fill mop buckets and cleaning bottles, because some girl decided she would like the bleach to be lemon-scented. Next story. We used to be able to take work vehicles home. Since we worked in random areas of the county, it was really nice being able to start the day at home, see where we needed to go, then head out into the field without needing to stop by the office since we rarely needed to go in. If you were a decent worker and not blatant about it, it also meant you had a bit more leeway. Going to drop the kids off at school before heading out, or coming home a bit early from the field, leaving a bit late for the field and enjoying a slower morning, etc. Management knew, but didn't really bring it up as long as we got our jobs done and weren't blatantly bragging about time theft. Then this one utter dumbass got caught using the vehicle for personal use, family outings, grocery store runs, even took it on a camping trip. He wanted to save mileage and gas on his personal vehicles. They found out because someone in admin saw him popping out of the work vehicle with his kids and wife to head into the grocery store. When they checked his vehicle's GPS records, which they only did if they suspected wrongdoing, they noticed him using it a ton on weekends and after work. They immediately ended being able to take vehicles home, so all approximately 50 of us had to begin commuting into the office to pick up our vehicles, then head into the field. Totally upended people's childcare plans and home life. People were getting home and leaving for work anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes later, earlier, having to go to bed earlier to account for the commute, change kid pickup, drop-off procedures, pack or get breakfast on the way, etc. And the worst part is some of these people would have to commute into work just to get their work truck, then drive back to do field work near their neighborhood, then back to the office to drop the vehicle off, then commute back home. If the dude hadn't been immediately fired, I am certain someone would have beat him senseless in the parking lot. Next story. Back in the early aughts, I worked for a security monitoring call center overnight. It was allowed for us to bring in personal devices and books to browse the web, read, study, big college town, lots of student employees, during the overnight since it was usually pretty dead. Truly a job of presence, and not much else. Only took one guy ignoring his literal only job to ruin it for everyone. He rightly got fired, and those privileges were reduced to remove electronics. Later, Twilight became super popular, and there was more than one over-obsessed coworker who, again, ignored their one and only job to then get fired and lose books for everyone. Dumb, low impact for sure. Management handled these things poorly. They shouldn't have punished the whole because of a few. Next story. We used to be able to wear earbuds if we were doing a task that didn't involve customer interaction. My coworker used it as an excuse to deliberately ignore other coworkers that she didn't like or feel like talking to. Yes, she admitted that she was doing it on purpose. It wasn't that she couldn't hear them. One of them got angry when she ignored a work-related question he asked her and went to management. Now no one gets to wear earbuds. Next story. I was the idiot that ruined Secret Santa. I didn't realize it was a silly gift-giving thing, and while I was within budget, the gift I got was too nice apparently, and we did not do Secret Santa in my time there again. Next story. No drying your wet clothes in the microwave. One winter, someone was trying to dry their socks and forgot they were in there until lunchtime when they were discovered by an HR employee. Next story. It was instituted before I started, but company vehicles are not allowed past a certain point. As background, our on-call people take a truck home in case someone needs to respond to a sewer line emergency. One person was apparently loading up power tools from the workshop and taking them home to have, in case they needed them to respond to an emergency, and then just leaving them at home, and not small ones like a handheld drill. Think table saw sized. We also have life preservers spread out around the catwalks around the sewage settling tanks, an arrangement whose cause I will leave to your imagination. Next story. Have to ask to switch to a different task when all our current work is completed because some people, or a person, was switching before the actual work was done because the other task is basically doing nothing but clicking on two things. Next story. In my previous job, people in my team were going to get an extra day. That didn't happen because one individual was baking cakes for her side hustle during work hours, showing all the evidence on her Instagram.